talk about crafting. I'm going to move this, try to figure out where to move the screen here so I can see you guys. Your church social media policy. So the first thing we want to do is make it concise and easy to understand. This is what we've already talked about. We want people, if they have it, ideally, not only do your social media people read this, but your leaders read this, and it's something that they can know and that they can easily share with people. And again, this is why I think I said this in the last email I sent. I love having policies. I hate crafting them because I'm on the board of a camp, and we have a team that does policies, and I always tell them how thankful I am for them, because it's so great when something comes up and somebody has a question or somebody has a complaint. You can go, oh, we have this policy and this is why we do this. And it doesn't always resolve everything, but it sure is helpful if it's not coming from just one person, but it is the policy. So you don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but like Catherine said, you need it to have some teeth and you need it to be helpful. So I think the first thing is, and this is for everybody, this is for all your leadership and into your church, what is your why? That should be at the top of your social media policy. And I think, Catherine, that can also address some of your like things about posting from outside. Our church social media ministry helps us stay connected with our current friends and members and allows us to reach beyond our walls and share the good news with people we haven't met yet. And then, depending on your context, you are going to probably want to add something about the message on our the message on our social media ministry should be consistent with the message and ministry of our church as a whole. You don't have to spell that out unless you do. And that's the other thing about policies, is they can be amended and adapted. So if there is a particular problem, and we've all seen policies like this, we've all seen a policy where something is stuck in and you're like, something happened there. Something, there's a reason that is in there. And so sometimes you do need to have, so I would encourage you as you start to be as concise and broad, knowing that you can come in, and if you're realizing that your church is having a specific challenge, you can add that to the policy. I wouldn't start your policy by saying we will not post anything political, because who's going to decide what's political? The next time you put, and Jesus said, feed the hungry people, and somebody calls in and says, why are we promoting socialist agenda? Like, we're not supposed to post political. So I would steer away from that and stick with, our church's overall ministry voice, and hopefully people are, but yeah, have your why. This is why we're doing social media. And I think this is important too, to really name that this is part of our ministry. Because I think, especially with some churches, social media is like, and I know it's been around forever, but there are still churches who think of social media ministry as this new shiny thing that you're supposed to do because it's hip and somebody needs to do a dance on TikTok. I literally talked to a church recently where one of the was like, I cannot get on TikTok and do a dance. And I'm like, you do not have to do this. That is not what you need to be doing for your ministry. So name, what is your why? We are on social media because we are doing the ministry of the church here. This is our outward facing ministry. So name your why and put it at the top of your policy. And then, yes, have a social media team. You want to establish a team of people who, and it doesn't have to be big, like 3 people. And give that team, have it be a trusted team. And I would encourage for the pastor to be a part of it. And give them the authority to create, schedule, and manage content, as well as respond to the comments and critiques, as is saying that as in accordance with your social media policy. You don't want to have to, like you're having to do, Catherine. Ideally, you don't want to be in a spot where you as the pastor are trying to micromanage your social media person because they are not posting appropriate things. That just is, that's an energy suck and a time suck, and it just sucks, period. So establish a team of people. Like I said, I think most churches can come up with 3 people who can manage that. And that also assumes, and I think most churches are past this, but your church social media page, not your groups, but your page, only administrators should be able to post. They should not be open pages where just anybody can put stuff out there. I'm going to shift here. I'm sitting actually on the floor in my parents' guest room right now. Um, so the other thing to do, and I know a lot of churches, the church I served, we had an issue with this. We had to change it. Make sure your platforms are under a church email and not an individual's email. Because that person is going to leave, that person's going to change their email, and you're not going to know right now how to get into. I'm working with a church right now that can't get into their Instagram account because they set it up and then they didn't use it, but now they like to use it again. And whoever set it up to begin with is no longer there, and it was under their email, and they're trying to chase that person down and figure out how to access their Instagram. And they honestly may end up just shutting it down. But they can't even do that. That's the other thing. They have to either just start a brand new one, and they can't get the old one shut down until they can access it. So make sure your platforms all have a church email, and your social media team uses that to access. Facebook's a lot easier with this because you can just establish a number of administrators. For Instagram, for TikTok. I don't know how YouTube works, because I think for YouTube, you just have to log in. Each person will have to log in with the church's email and the password. Facebook makes it a lot easier to have multiple administrators.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, please.
Considering that Instagram is connected to Meta and all that sort of stuff, like a lot of the times, especially given how easy it can be to post both on Facebook and Instagram, does it automatically carry over those administrators? So like, instead of having to, log into Instagram specifically.
You know what? You're right. It if you log into Meta, if your Facebook and Instagram are linked,
yeah.
If somebody has done that, I think you have to think you have to connect them from Instagram. So somebody
ours are connected already. So
right. So if they're connected, if the administrators can log into Meta, they should be able, yes, to post to both. Wow. If someone has connected them.
That's good to know.
Yeah, you can do that. I would also, and this is like something to think of later, is to remember that not everything looks the same on Instagram and Facebook. For instance, you may not want to post everything on both. If you do carousels, which are very big on Instagram right now, carousels don't look good on Facebook. They just post as a bunch of random images, which some people still do, and that's okay, but they just don't flow necessarily in the order you want them to flow. And so often if I'm posting a carousel, I just post it to Instagram.
But the good thing is you can still do that on Meta also.
Yes, you can.
It does give you
say just Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do both or just one or the other.
Yeah.
And also I tend to post more on Facebook than on Instagram. So I will post things on Facebook that I also don't post on Instagram. But yeah, that is a great tool. The only thing is and there's not a good platform for this yet, is Instagram stories. If you can schedule Instagram stories, but you can't do any stickers, any links, any things like that. You have to do that pretty much live. Nobody quite has found a way to schedule interactive stories ahead of time, basically. But you can schedule stories there too. Let's see. Okay, so social media, a team of people, and unless there's a problem, just give them the authority to manage it. You do not want your session, your board, your council micromanaging social media. That just gets into an icky place for everybody.
And I'm changing our Instagram from my email to our church's email. Admin's email. So thank you, our info at Second Press. Thank you.
Because you're CPEing.
Yeah, I am.
So you do want an approval process, not for posts, but for people setting up new stuff. This has come up for some churches too. If you decide, hey, we need an Instagram page, Hey, we want to start a TikTok. Hey, and it's especially true for Facebook groups, is you will have groups in your church who want to do a group for youth, or and some churches like will have an Instagram for their youth group that's separate from the church. You want to just have something so that people don't just set these up on their own. And even on the social media team, you want the church to be aware that, hey, we're going to have this new, because again, this is the outward facing voice of your ministry. And so just have a, hey, the social media team, or have, if somebody wants to come to the social media team and say, hey, we'd like to start a group for our prayer group, then let the social media team approve it and say, yes, we've approved Susie. She's going to set up a face group so that the new Bible study, and Susie is going to manage the group, and that sort of thing. You just want some kind of check and balance, that people don't just start setting up platforms for your church. And again, most of the time people just do it because they don't think anything about it. It's become so common. My 23-year-old daughter is still on Facebook because from time to time, things you're involved in set up a Facebook group and she needs to access that. So Facebook groups, even that are big, even across younger age groups, because they're just so handy, and no other platform has that kind of closed group or ability to kind of form that community like that. So just have an approval process, something easy so that you know who's putting stuff out there in the name of XYZ church. And then you want to have a leadership covenant. And I have an example of this that I will send you in a PDF. Actually, I'll send it to you in a Canva document so you can edit it and make it your own. You want to have, and we can look at this if we have some time. You want to have a covenant that your leaders, and that can be up to you, are your leaders, your staff, your session or your board or your council? Are they your youth group team? Are they you can decide what is leadership. And one of the things this does is also can solidify that people have their own social media platforms, and especially for church staff, you can acknowledge, hey, I can acknowledge that I understand that the opinions I put on my own personal platforms are not that of the church. However, I will conduct myself on social media in such a way that reflects positively on this church. Let me see if I can
just for the team.
Huh?
Does that have to be just for the team, or do you need to believe?
I would do that. I would do that because I think this also, and this is up to you, I would do this for your church elders, anybody who is considered a leader in the church, an elected, that might be because they are, whether or not they realize it, they are the face of the church. They are, here, I'm going to be bold and stop this share. And I'm going to share again, and I will just give you, let me see, I have this. Let me find, I'm so good at this. Oh, here we go. There we go. I want to share this though. Let's see. I don't want to share that screen. Are you seeing social media policy now? You're seeing that? Okay. This is not as fancy as the PowerPoint, but let me move down to, oh, that's the social media policy example. That's not what I want. I'm going to go back to my Canva. You can see all my Canva stuff here. I spend way too much of my time. Here we go, on Canva. So here is an example, and I'll send you this template so you can play with it. As a leader in this church, I commit to this. One of the things, you will not criticize the church on social media, period. If you have a problem, you will handle concerns and disagreements through appropriate internal channels. You're not going to air dirty laundry. You're not going to share confidential or sensitive information about the church or its members. We're going to talk about prayer requests in a minute. And then I recognize that while my social media platforms do not represent the opinions of the church, I will strive to represent my church positively in all my social media interactions. And we'll talk about this in privacy. I will include another non-related adult in any private messaging I have with any minor in the church. We'll talk about that later in privacy and protection. Treat social media like the open door or the 2 adult policy. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And this covenant agreement is effective from when I sign it to when I end my time as a leader in this church. Like basically and then again, I will send this to you in a Canva template so you can adapt. But that's basically, you just want them to say they're not going to be a jerk on social media. They're not going to criticize or try to air out problems of the church on social media. And there's a way they will interact with youth on social media. So now I'm going to go back and look at us go. So I think it's really important that your leadership signs that. Again, it's not a legally binding thing. It's just a covenant saying, hey, this is how we will behave on social media. And it just kind of gets everybody on the same page. I got a text one time, and this is something that you can't. I got a text one time from a member, and she goes, I don't know what's going on between you and Holly, but I want you to know I'm praying for you both. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what has happened? And this member was angry about something I said in my sermon and decided I was anti-American, and had posted and tagged the church and me. So that was fun. That was really fun. But you certainly don't want people who are identified as leaders in your church to get mad and air stuff on social media. So you want to talk about in your policy, privacy protection. In considering tagging, I think one of the best policy, and again, your context, your people, size of church, all of that comes in, but I recommend just not ever tagging anybody other than church staff. And if church staff gives permission, just not tagging people and letting people know they can tag themselves. And you can set your permissions up so that people can. And you'll find that a lot of your grownups will go back and tag themselves in the pictures of the church, but that's up to them. Permissions, mainly, and you will, if you have some attorneys involved, they will get you mired in the depths of this. I would mainly just get permission from youth, and we'll talk about that too in a second. You can, and some churches do, and it started doing this when people were broadcasting, is to put in your bulletin that our service is being broadcast over Zoom, and photos may be taken and used on social media. And that just kind of puts in that's full disclosure about that, so that. And I know of some churches where people have actually asked the pastors where they can sit that they will not be on camera. And they have said, oh, well, we never, a lot of people only use one camera. But for those who use 2, so that has been requested. So you don't need, social media has become so ubiquitous. You do not need to get permission for everybody who walks in your door that the back of their head may be on social media kind of stuff.
Is that kind of like going back to the idea that a worship service is a public event? Yes.
Yeah. And there's not what is it, the legal term, a reasonable expectation.
Right. Yeah.
That it is a public event. And especially now, if you are out in public, the idea that your image may show up online, that is just kind of a known thing now.
Yeah. It's a good idea to put it in the bulletin. I just never thought about it because.
Yeah. So you've just done full disclosure. Our big joke, we used to live really close in New York City to Columbus Circle, which is that's the entrance to the southern part of Central Park. And it's a big tourist area. And I walked through there every day for 2 years. And I thought, how many tourist photos and videos am I in? If I ever had somebody like do a search for my image, there's no telling how often I would show up. That is just, and how many random people have I caught in my own videos and pictures that may or may not make it online. But so that is kind of a reasonable expectation, but it is good to put it in your bulletin just so people, again, prayer requests, this can be part of you never put a prayer request out unless the family or the person requests it. You do not want to be putting people's private business out on social media. The same thing with death and obituaries and death notices. You sure don't want to put, hey, we're, want to let everybody know that so-and-so passed, and not everybody the family wanted to knows yet. And I don't think churches are doing this. However, if you have a social media committee and somebody has heard, they could jump the gun on that. Just make sure that things that are personal like that, you don't post without permission. And, because there may be people in your church who would really like that out there. Hey, I'm going in for chemotherapy and I would really appreciate prayers. And they can contact your social media committee and say, hey, would you put this out there? And I think that is very appropriate. But you don't want me to contact you and say, hey, my friend is going in for chemotherapy. Would you put Susie's name and ask for prayers? And again, a lot of this is common sense, but sometimes it just needs to be named and have it in people's heads. Most people who are doing I would say all people who are doing your social media in church are not out to cause problems, or in fact, they're probably doing it because they really want to help and they want to be involved in the ministry. So just to give them those heads up so that that doesn't happen. Youth and children. I was talking to, this is a very broad spectrum of how people handle this. Everything from very, very tight controls to fairly loose controls. But as I've talked to other youth people, it seems like the thing that works the best is to obtain permission from parents at the beginning of every school year. When you get those, here's our current info, here's our contact information. And I did at my last church, I had a parent who had 4 kids and did not want their images on social media. And we never used them. We just didn't. We were a small enough church that everybody knew her kids and who they were. So it was very easy not to use images of them in our social media. And then the other thing is church and adult connections on social media. There are some churches that say that church staff and elders, and you can't be friends with people on social media. And that kind of dates back to just Facebook. And now you can follow on Instagram, on TikTok, you just follow people. And youth are going to follow adults in your church, and adults are going to follow youth. And I think that's perfectly appropriate. I think what you want to address are the private messaging options, and that you don't want an adult from your church messaging a youth, even just about something simple. You don't want to start a private message stream with a minor in your church. And so if you do want to send a message, just copy the pastor, copy another youth leader, copy another social media committee person, just so it's not you and this youth. Treat it again as the open space closed room policy, and message Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, TikTok Messenger. Those are closed rooms who need 2 adults in the space. And I think that resonates with most people. And I haven't heard of any adults really pushing back on that. So
I tell my adults to be careful and mindful when being asked when they're asked by youth to follow. And it's an old model, I think, because all youth are gonna want to follow like a cool 24-year-old that's like helping out with youth. But it's still in our child protection policy that like youth cannot follow adults on social media. However, we have like, it used to be our 2PY Instagram, and now it's all of the church Instagram. And youth can follow that. And our adults through that Instagram can follow youth. And I'm not so worried. I once was worried about like youth messaging adults through that, but then I realized that like multiple adults have access to that, and so it's like not so worrisome because all of us could go and like check the private messaging, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's not really a private, that's not a
No.
closed room. That is
Yeah.
an open room.
Yeah.
And things like that are
Are
semi-public.
okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think that's the
key.
that's the key, that you don't have adults communicating with youth in a closed where nobody
Yep.
else is witnessing
Yep.
it.
Yep.
And that is something else maybe in your covenant that you might want to add. I am mindful that young people young people in this church are on social media. And I think now more and more people are. I think there was a generation in between like me and my daughter, and maybe Jordan, you were caught up in this for a little bit. I don't know. There was a generation who got caught up in realizing, oh my gosh, my whole life can be put online, and I didn't realize this. And where none of my young life was put online, my daughter grew up knowing that from the time she could be aware of it, that any of her behavior could show up online. So I think people are more, it's becoming more ubiquitous is not the right word, but I think people deal with it better now. And know
Commonplace.
that, are just aware that what you put online is there and anybody can see it, and you can pay attention to that. And I think, yeah, just reminding some of our church people that, hey, our kids are also online and they're seeing this too. So be careful how you interact with other people, because people are paying attention. And this is something you may want to include in your social media policy. And this could be something really that your social media committee agrees to. You may want to put it in your overall policy, but you probably want it somewhere so that, we take criticisms that can't be addressed in one reply. That's my rule. You've heard the thing, if something has something wrong with their appearance that they can't fix in less than 30 seconds, don't mention it. But if it is, tell them. If there's a criticism that can just be addressed in one reply, like a lot of times people will criticize something that they don't fully understand, like they didn't get the whole context, and you go, oh, no, that's not what that was. Or you can just say, hey, I'm really sorry. We're sorry that da 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 da. Sometimes it's just a one reply. But if it can't, just take it offline. And your social media team needs the authority to delete inappropriate comments. You don't want that to be done by committee or micromanaged. And then you're going to want to define what can get somebody blocked from your platforms. And I have that in the sample social media policy. And
Can I
it's
ask a
pretty.
question about that? And
Yeah,
you
sure.
you might be getting to this. What about like the Google review? And that you can't necessarily delete.
You can't do anything about a Google review.
Right.
The
Well, and
thing
so
about-
yeah, we randomly had a person like I just happened to look the other day and there was a 1-star review and I was like, I don't even know who this person is, or anything like that. So I literally just wrote and was like, kind of in that like not being snarky, but trying to address it and just saying, hey, so if you're new, like this is Pastor Catherine. If you're new, I guess I missed you somewhere because I haven't met you and you're not a member. So if you have a problem, can you let us know what it is? Because you just literally left her 1-star.
They didn't comment or anything?
Nope, no.
Oh, I've never really seen that.
Now we did have something happen at our preschool a number of years ago that fortunately has passed, and it seems like more time is helping to distance ourselves from it. But at the same time, it's like we haven't heard anything from that arena in at least 3 years. So why all this anyway. So it was very strange. So I basically just tried to address it in a way that was like calling out the fact that I didn't know who this person was.
Yeah.
And be like, please, please call the church office and, whatever. But it was crappy.
Well, the other thing you can do about that is to contact your church members, your trusted church members, maybe your leadership, and say, hey, we've had this happen. I'm trying to address it, but what we need you to do is go on and do some positive Google reviews to combat that. We actually had this happen in the camp where I'm on the board. Somebody got mad about something and just left this scathing review. But the review itself wasn't scathing because what they were upset about was fairly small. And it was easily addressed. And in fact, it was addressed, but they still left a 1-star review, which averages in and took the camp's review. It tanked so basically all the board members went on and wrote good reviews about why we like the camp and that sort of thing. So that is one way you can combat a negative Google review, is to have your people write positive reviews. And then people also can see that you have replied. So I think you can address the comment. One of the problems is the star rating that you then have to try to mitigate by more positive reviews. So I don't, I don't think that in itself will cause you any problems as a church, because it seems like a troll. And I think there are ways that you can you can, to keep people from being doxxed and, basically, somebody from coming in and trying to tank a business. There are ways you can appeal to Google, but it's a really cumbersome process. And for a 1-star review, I wouldn't. But yeah, you definitely want to define what you can get somebody blocked from your platforms, and give the social media people a chance to give them the authority to do that. What most churches do is you have a kind of a page rules, like the policy, the guidelines of your page, and you can post those at the top of your page. Especially on Facebook, you can. And then you can warn people. You can delete a comment, and you can send people a warning when you delete a comment. And if you can say, hey, this violates our guidelines. Just want to let you know. And if they keep doing it, then you can block them. And I say this a lot. Your church's social media page, that is your church's social media page. It is not a forum for everybody to air their opinions, their thoughts, their views, their arguments. This is your page to do ministry. So you do not owe it to anybody to air their own stuff on your church's social media page. They have their own platforms and they can do it there. You do not, and people will try to guilt churches about this. This is a church. You should allow everyone's opinions here. No, you should not, and you do not need to. This is your church's page to share your church's ministry, values, thoughts, beliefs with your people. You do not owe anyone any space on your church's page. That is really hard for some churches to embrace. So those are the community guidelines, and I have some examples of that I'll send you as well. And then you have those posted. And then your committee has the authority to deal with those as they need to. So there is crafting a church social media policy, and I'm going to come back into I'm going to pull back up. Here we go. I'm just going to pull this up real quick. And again, I will send this to you as a template. So all of the things we've just talked about in our PowerPoint, I have here in a document with some examples, because I always like to, one thing you don't want to do when whoever needs to approve this is just take a blank slate and start writing it. You want to have a small group of people submit this for approval. And I always say policies don't need to be crafted by committee. They need to be approved by committee. They need to be crafted by 1 or 2 people and then approved by the appropriate people. So, what's our why? And you may want to add something in here again about if you have your own church mission statement, you can add that into this is our why, and social media is the place where we live out our why, just like we do on Sunday morning, just like we do here in the church building. Your church social media team, this gives them who they are, that they have the right to do this. They have the right to delete comments that are offensive, and you can, again, it's another place where you want to spell out as much as possible, but not every single possible thing that could happen. Here's who's going to approve a new platform. Here's about conduct, and we have a covenant for them to sign. Here's what we're going to do for privacy protection. Here's what our community guidelines are. So I think you can expand upon all of these things as you see fit for your context and what you need to do in your place. And you can emphasize things that have come up in your own place. And in your own, I'm going to come back in here. Let's see. Oh, I want to stop sharing my screen again. Here we go. There we go. Here we go. So I will send you those documents as Canva templates so that you can exercise that and make your own. Are there other things that have come up in your social media, in your church, that you feel like need to be addressed that don't fall under any of those categories? Yeah, Catherine.
So I think it's less about policy. And so this either is one that I need to go back and watch or, seen otherwise, but more about how to best lay out. I mean, I know you've given some calendars of like, here's a month of whatever, but my specific problem is, because it's currently just me. I mean, it would be great to have a team, but unfortunately, I'm also pretty much one of the only ones who's the most active,
right,
on all of this. And so our outreach ministry team is trying to kind of become this for me, which is great. But, how far in advance to try to have things scheduled so that you don't have to worry about it, but you can always delete or change if something comes up, if there's a national, if there's some natural disaster that you want to do a prayer instead of putting up that wacky picture at VBS or something like that.
Right.
So like, those different places where you could, break in. So how far, I mean, do you do a week at a time? Do you try to do the month at a time?
I think that the most helpful, I say no more. You don't want to schedule any more than 3 months at a time ahead, because more than 3 months, you are so far removed. You're just really removed from what's going to be happening in the world. I mean, think about how much things have changed in our world in the last 2 weeks. So if you're scheduling out 3 months in advance, I say no less than a month, because I think, and that's why I send out the calendars the way I do. You're about to get the September stuff for August. And I think scheduling a month ahead, a month out, and that seems doable also. I found most churches scheduling 3 months ahead. That's like,
I would love to be a month ahead. I mean, I would love to be 36 hours ahead.
Yeah.
So that's my big problem. Like I said,
but what you can do is you can start doing it. And again, it's a matter of like scheduling out that time, figuring out how long that's going to take and scheduling out that time. And for some people, it does work to do a week ahead. That's the rhythm that works. Okay. I'm going to come in on Monday morning, and especially if I'm the one who's doing it. And on Monday morning, I'm going to schedule next week's social media, and then that's done. And I can do that. I know I can do that in an hour. I can do it in 2 hours, and do that. Other people will carve out more time at the beginning of each month to do the next month. And maybe that's like half a day that you say, at the beginning of every month on that, I've got a half day that I'm doing social media for September. And I know a lot of people, will know by that time, don't know 3 months in advance necessarily what they're preaching on. They do if they do lectionary, and they just always do lectionary. But if they don't, they may not know. And that's always a good thing to include, you know, you see that a lot in my stuff, sneak peek at what's coming up on Sunday, preview of this sermon, all that good stuff.
You act like preachers plan well in advance, and some of us don't, Anne.
That is true. That is true. Not everybody does, but a lot of people are lectionary preachers, so you can know, like, maybe. I was always kind of I kind of like to have a little theme arc, so I might not know what I was going to say, but I at least knew what the topic was a little bit in advance. Although I will admit sometimes it would come time and I'd be like, I don't know what to say about this. I got nothing, and you'd switch. So you're right. Sometimes it does not. You know, it's shocking how things don't always go according to plan in church life and ministry. But there is so much, it does create that planning ahead just does give you so much freedom, because as you know, you never know when you're going to have a crisis and everything falls apart and you have zero time to do anything else. And it's so nice when those social media posts just magically appear in the midst of, and you can also do that with other things, you know, emails. And my mom gets my emails from Doubting Believer. And one time she was like, she goes, how did you have time to send out an email today? I'm like, I didn't send it out today. I sent it out. I wrote that last week and I scheduled it to go today. She's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea how you just stopped and sent an email. I'm like, I didn't do that. So it's really nice to have those features. And again, it's just like, my friend Kelly and I, we do stuff about faith at home, and we talk about just establishing new rhythms. And that's kind of what social media ministry is establishing social media as part of your ministry. I don't know any pastor who preaches every week who would not schedule out time to work on your sermon. You just have to, or it's not going to get done. And the same way, you just have to schedule that time, especially if you don't have people who are doing that for you. And I always think the pastor should, even if you, I always think the pastor should be involved in the social media ministry, even if you have some people who will take it and run with it, because you are part of the voice of the ministry and you want social media to also have that voice. You don't want the social media ministry to be devoid of the pastor's voice.
Josh Richard, who is at Myers Park and does communication for Myers Park Pres. I emailed him and got a lot of their resources, like their communications, like the thing, style guide, that's what it's called.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they probably have a style guide.
Yeah, but he encouraged me. We're reviving our communications committee, and he encouraged me to think about communications, not just social media, but all communications in the church as a ministry, because that's something that his church has had a hard time seeing. And it is a ministry, letting people know what is going on in the church, because there's inevitably somebody always who's like, I didn't know this was happening.
Right.
It's like, how? We sent it out, we said it in the announcements and during worship, like how?
Yeah.
So it is a ministry.
Yeah, it is. And it's as much as you can get people thinking of social media and all communications like that. And one thing I like to remind people is that today, what is considered a regular churchgoer, like when Barna does surveys and things, a regular churchgoer comes to church 2 Sundays a month. That is a regular church attendee. So that means even your regulars, your members, are only showing up in person 2 times a month. And that just, to me, amplifies how much of a ministry communications is. With your emails and your website and your social media, you are staying connected with those people who you may only be seeing in person 2 times a month, but you can connect with online, through emails, through, you can communicate with them on a daily basis. And I think that's really, really important in our ministry context these days. And I see more and more churches are hiring communications managers. Presbyteries are doing that. And I think that's really, I think people are recognizing it, but the people in our churches still aren't thinking about communications as a ministry. And one of the ways you do that is you just start naming it as such. And the other thing I like to tell people is put it on your agendas, on your ministry, when you have your ministry committee, when you have your session, your board, your council, social media ministry, that is an agenda item that we are talking about as part of our ministry. Communications ministry, however you want to umbrella all of that, that is something that the leaders of the church need to be paying attention to, because it is a ministry of the church, just like worship, Christian education, fellowship, communications.
And it has
all of it.
implications on a lot of other committees too, how it can
Right.
weave into like stewardship committee to get stuff out during stewardship season, and how
Yeah.
it can improve their process, and just marketing too. So
Yeah, and if stewardship is
huge.
not using communications and social media, what is it, like 60% of people who give to churches do so electronically? And that's one of the things that you eventually get when you talk about that you want to reach people online, and it's not about getting butts and pews. When you get people to be honest about that, the reason they're worried about people not coming to church on Sunday morning is, how are we going to get their money? And they don't want to say that out loud, but that is at the back of their minds. And the truth is, that's not how you're getting their money anyway.
I've found that part of my issue to that point, I talked about adding the possibility of text giving, and immediately the stewardship chair, which is our finance, ministry team, was like, no, we don't need to do that. And I was like, just because you don't doesn't mean that we should, and so I kind of had to do one of those, like, every opportunity to give is a way to give. It doesn't cost us anything more to have this opportunity. So let's have that opportunity. Like they don't see that in the.
Yeah, millennials and Gen Z, they give on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
And my 23-year-old daughter, who makes no money, often contributes $5 at a time on her phone to something that is important to her. $5-10.
Montreat added a Venmo option for offering this year.
Yeah.
And I never have cash. And
Yeah.
so that was super helpful to me.
Yeah, to have Venmo, to text, to
Yeah.
And especially if you have the QR code in your bulletin that you can just scan on your phone and it takes you to the giving page. Yeah, that's just, why would you not? That's just a missed opportunity to I remember the first time at my church when we stopped ordering the envelopes. I went to the session, I said, we got 3 people who are using these envelopes to give. And it cost, it was several $100s. And we didn't have several $100s to spend on something people weren't using. And even people who didn't use that was really painful to let go of. That was like a symbol of those little envelopes, was like some kind of talisman symbol. But you know what? We let go of those envelopes, and the people who gave that way still just put their checks in the back, like,
well, and I think we've even gotten to the point in that similar vein of basically you have to opt in if you want envelopes. So instead of ordering them, it's like, if you can't find any other way to do it. And to be honest, I don't even think that we have any that use them, and they just bring their checks forward, fold it in half, and place it in the plate.
So yeah, with giving and social media and I've had some interesting conversations on TikTok. Social media for churches, I have a TikTok channel that's up now. And it's really funny because you reach, one of the reasons I like our private Facebook group, and I went back to that because I like having a group that is insular, and it is just people who are church people doing social media on Instagram and on TikTok. While you have an algorithm, it can go out to anybody. And so I put up one about giving and how important it is to use social media to give people opportunities to give. And I even say, contrary to popular belief, most churches are not very good at asking for money. Oh my gosh, I got some comments on that one. All churches want is your money, and why would you put that on social media? Why would you? And I played with some people. I'm like, why would you not? And but these were not church people. They were people who had an idea about church, had their own. But I think the people who are following you specifically, I think Facebook, you get a more insular group than you do on Instagram and TikTok, which can be good and it can be bad. But I think just putting on there, giving people opportunities and reminders to give money is just really important. Yeah. I think a lot of people want to help. And if we just give them the reminder, oh, here's how you can. And I think on social media too, I'm getting off topic here, but it's important to tell people why they're giving, not just give to our church. But hey, we've got this great youth group ministry, and if you want to support it, you can give here. And hey, we've been helping these folks over here make sure that this neighborhood is safe because we're doing this if you want to help. And I think most people want to help. And when you give them a way to do it, they will. And especially if you remind them. Because again, we intend to help, but we need those reminders. So are there any other, going back to policies, are there any other things that you feel like have cropped up, will crop up? And again, this is something you can review every year and say, oh, you know what, we should probably add this. And again, policies do not have to be the perfect, address every possible scenario to be approved. And I will say, if you have a lawyer on your committee or in your on your session, they can kind of hold things up sometimes because they will want to address every possible contingency. And sometimes you can remind them this is not a contract, it is a policy, and it's a covenant and not a contract. And a guide maybe is a better term to use if you need to. There have not been a lot of, I've looked at this, I do not find a lot of successful legal actions taken against churches over social media. That is not really a thing that is happening right now. Again, it goes back to this expectation of privacy in the current climate. So yeah. The other thing I know churches have done, a couple more things that you can do, and this I think should just be up to your committee or whoever's running social media. If something is going down where people have gotten really upset, you can cut off comments from your post. You can do that on any of the social media platforms. You can just stop comments so that people can no longer comment. If a post goes really wrong, you can just take it down. Don't feel like you have to keep it up and keep explaining or moderating an argument. Just take it down. You don't have to double down on something that's gone wrong. So those are other ways you can address that. But okay, we're a little bit over, but while we're here, are there other social media questions that have come up that are not policy related? Anything else?
So our church does not yet have TikTok. I am a TikTok stalker. I usually don't post because I don't think people need to see this, or dancing or, asking questions, whatever. And I'm also probably given the fact that there's this, all of this other stuff. I don't necessarily need to be like, here's another thing, right? But I also recognize how popular it continues to be. So, but and also it's kind of that thing about editing and all that sort of stuff. And so if you don't know about without, I'm not sponsored by, I wish I was, but Opus Pro or Pro Opus Clips. I actually am able to take my sermon and drop it in. So like you could take this link
Right.
and drop it in, and all that sort of thing. And so I've been posting that in a square on Instagram and Facebook, and then putting it, changing it and restructuring and putting it in my TikTok, only so that it's out there, kind of as a dipping a toe in the water.
Right.
And at some point, and maybe a private conversation or just another time, is to understand the stats that come out in terms of who's following and who's not, or who's watching it, and I mean, I know, you kind of know that for YouTube, and it's probably similar with Facebook and other things, but the ways that at least it looks like non-followers are the ones who are seeing it, according to how I read the stuff. But I have never had a non-follower like the video.
Yeah.
It's only people I know. So it's just, like I said, that's just another thing in terms of dipping the toe in the water. And I know you've provided us with some great stuff in terms of, like, if you want to do a video or you want to do a reel, like, here are some things to ask or things like that. So that's, I guess that's our piece, really, is where, right now, the fact that I'm even getting it in there and getting it, usually 2 clips onto our Facebook page weekly, is pretty much the
great.
extent of where I'm at right now, because we don't have a week in advance, I don't have a social media
Right.
team. So, but unfortunately, it's also literally become almost all videos, because
On your Facebook?
on our Facebook page, because
Okay.
it's here's the, and we're not streaming on Facebook anymore because there were too many problems with the streaming platform. So instead, it's here's the YouTube link
Yeah.
for a lot, which is fine, but it's
You'd
either
be surprised about how many people don't do that. How they post their worship service on YouTube and then they don't put the link on their social media for people to see it on YouTube.
Right. Well, and so many people were used to seeing it on Facebook. So
Right.
that's just the natural way to go. But I think it's becoming YouTube links and, sermon clips. And so trying to intersperse. So I am trying to, post like Tuesdays and Thursdays of the sermon clips, if there end up being 2, and then putting some other things in between. So I think it's like you're saying, getting enough time early on in the week to be able to sit down and say, I'm going to work on it for a couple of hours or whatever.
Well, I tell you what you have access to as a stopgap right now. It's not ideal, but I have a whole thing of 2023 posts for every day.
Oh, I've got
You
those.
have access to that.
Yeah. Oh, I've got
And you
those.
can
Yeah.
just like slap your church name on it and download it and schedule those for September.
Yeah.
Or August. I mean, yeah, we're coming up on August. And that will give you just some, a little bit of variety for right now. That's what that is. That is a stopgap for.
Would you say same time every day, or like vary it up?
You can look and see, and Meta will tell you some about
like
when the best time for you to post is.
Okay.
I find the morning works better for me, that when I post stuff in the morning, it gets more traction than stuff I post in the afternoon. In general, that is not a hard and fast rule.
Right.
So I don't know that with Facebook and Instagram, it makes a huge amount of difference. But you can follow kind of like what, if Meta says, oh, hey, your Instagram page gets a lot of 4 o'clock in the afternoon seems to be a big time for my Instagram page, according to Meta. But I have found that that is not a huge,
it's going to find the people it needs to find.
It's going to find, yeah. And then on TikTok has the best algorithm of anything. So as you are stalking TikTok, if you see the dances or whatever, scroll past them. Don't watch them, because the more you watch them, the more you're going to see that. If you'll follow, like, hashtag PCUSA, hashtag progressive churches, and watch those videos in its entirety, you will get more of those. And then that kind of gives you more of an idea of what people are doing, what's working. And it will push more of those kinds of videos towards you, so that you can see what other people are doing and what might work for your church.
Yeah. Cool.
There's one guy, and he's a Presbyterian. I can't think of his name. He has he breaks all the rules. He stands under a tree and wears his collar. He's got gray hair, not a young guy, and shares a bit of a message. And he's got like 80,000 followers. Like, so don't feel like you have to have like some trendy, I'll have to, when I find him again, I'll put it in our group to show people. But yeah, he stands under a tree and shares a message with his collar on and his gray hair. And it resonates with people. So you don't have to have always the flashy editing.
Right.
I mean, those are tips and hacks that, yes, can be effective, but also you find your people, you have a message that resonates with them. I have lots of people who follow me who don't realize I'm religious at first, because I do some stuff that's not necessarily, and they're like, oh wait, and some people are mad and some people are like, huh, okay, weird.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. With this haircut, absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. You're a what? Can you do that? And
Can,
because TikTok, because of the algorithm, I get a lot less hate on TikTok than I do on Instagram. On Instagram, I get pushed towards a lot of conservative Christians and I get more negative comments. But on TikTok, I tend to get pushed towards the people who would be more receptive to what I'm talking about. So
can you send, when you send the social media thing, can you just send the group Facebook link again too? Because
yes,
I think
I will. Yes, I
I've
will.
seen some other ones, but not that one, I think. So
Yeah, the private, I really like keeping that. Yeah. And you can people can invite anybody who's in the group can invite someone into it. But yeah. All right. Any other questions while we're here? Jordan, I hope you have a great CPE experience. Where are you doing that?
In Louisville.
Is it a traditional hospital?
Yeah, it's where I did CPE during seminary. So I know the staff there already,
Oh,
the
cool.
chaplains. So
That'll be exciting.
yeah.